Part 1. She was smashed by 3 male coppers at once. In a small village, there was a beautiful girl named Favor. She was the only child of her parents, and everyone said she was as gentle as the morning breeze. Favor was not only kind but also very smart. She loved going to school, and every year she came home with a big prize because she was the best student. The whole village was proud of her, and her parents smiled wide when they saw her with her prizes. But Favor's life took a drastic turn when she became an adult. A set of coppers, Corey, Cunnel, Dazzy, and Favor came into the village for their service. What started as a mere friendship between them and Favor ended on the bed as they forcefully took advantage of her, all of them at once. But they didn't realize Favor was no ordinary girl, and what happened next, no one saw it coming. You see, Favor had a big dream. She would always say, "Mama, Papa, I want to be a banker when I grow up. I want to go to the city and wear fine clothes and work in a tall building with many people." Her parents would nod and say, "Yes, my child, you will be great one day. Keep studying, and all your dreams will come true." Favor's life was bright and full of hope. She believed that nothing could stop her from becoming the banker she always wanted to be. But what no one knew was that her bright and happy life was about to change, and nothing would be the same again. One sunny day, while Favor sat outside dreaming about her future in the big city, something terrible happened. Her parents went to the next village for a short visit, but on their way back, there was a terrible accident. Favor's parents didn't make it. Just like that, her whole world came crashing down. When the news reached the village, everyone was shocked. The people gathered, and the village held a proper burial for Favor's parents. There was singing, there were prayers, and everyone came to support her. But none of it could heal Favor's broken heart. She cried every day, and the pain was so deep that she couldn't even think of school anymore. Before, Favor was always the brightest in her class. Now, she could barely pay attention. Her mind was full of sadness. Sometimes she just sat there, staring at her books but seeing nothing. The teachers saw her pain and didn't scold her. They knew what had happened and didn't want to make things harder for her. But Favor didn't know how to go on. Her dreams of becoming a banker seemed to vanish. Life felt empty, and her heart was filled with sorrow. What Favor didn't realize was that her struggles were just beginning, because soon she'd get herself into the adult life she didn't plan. Favor managed to move on to secondary school, but things weren't the same anymore. Her grades were no longer good. The girl who used to be the best in class was now struggling. Favor didn't want to go to school at all, but in her village, every child had to go to school. If she stopped, it would bring shame to her family, even though they were no longer there to guide her. Every day, Favor felt sad. She sat in class but barely paid attention. Her books looked blurry through her teary eyes. Sometimes she would sit quietly in a corner, crying all alone. She missed her parents so much, and the dreams of becoming a banker seemed far away, like a balloon floating out of reach. She thought, "How can I go to the city and become a banker without my parents? What's the point of studying when I have no one to be proud of me anymore?" These thoughts filled her head, and it made her feel like her life had no meaning. But no matter how sad she was, Favor had no choice. She had to keep going to school, even when it felt hard, even when it felt pointless. Little did she know, her life was about to take another unexpected turn with the coming of the new Corpers into the village. One bright morning, Favor walked into school and noticed something different. The classroom was decorated with colorful paper and ribbons. Her classmates were buzzing with excitement, whispering and laughing. Everyone seemed happier than usual. Favor sat quietly at her desk, confused. She didn't understand what was happening. Suddenly, one of her friends whispered, "Didn't you hear? The old teachers are leaving, and new teachers, youth course members, are coming to teach us." The whole class was excited because the course members were young and lively, not like the old, strict teachers they had before. The students couldn't wait to meet them. When the chorus members arrived, they were full of energy, smiling, and asking lots of questions. They made learning fun, and the other students were eager to answer their questions. Everyone wanted to be noticed by the new teachers, raising their hands high and shouting out answers. Corey was moved by her story. He looked at her and said softly, "Favor, I'm so sorry for what you've been through, but you are still the brilliant girl you used to be. I will help you get your confidence back. You will smile again, and you will be the best in class once more." Favor wiped her tears as Corey promised to help her, but little did Favor know that his kindness would lead her down a path she never expected, and soon she'd find herself in bed with the Corpers. After that day, Favor began visiting Corey's house for extra lessons. He would sit with her and go over everything she had missed in class. Slowly but surely, Favor started to improve. She could answer questions again, and the quiet sadness that once surrounded her began to fade. Corey was patient and kind, always telling her, "You can do it, Favor. You're smart. Just keep trying." As Favor grew more confident, she began sharing her dreams with him. One evening, while they were studying, she looked up and said, "Corey, I want to go to the city." Corey smiled and nodded. "You will, Favor. You're strong, and if you keep working hard, you'll achieve your dream. Just stay focused on your studies for now." Corey didn't just help her with school. He supported her in other ways too. Sometimes he would buy her food, knowing she was struggling, and even gave her small amounts of money to help with her needs. Favor felt safe with him, and slowly, her life started to improve. She began to smile again, and little by little, she started to feel hopeful. Maybe her dreams weren't gone after all. While Corey was busy helping Favor get back on track with her studies, the other male Corpers started to notice something else about her beauty and how often she visited Corey's house. They began whispering among themselves. "Favor is such a beautiful girl," one of them said. "She seems to be spending a lot of time with Corey. Maybe we can have some fun too." Another chimed in, "Yeah, we should all have her, even if it's just once. She's always at Corey's house. Who knows what they do behind closed doors?" They laughed as they made their wicked plans, then decided to approach Corey about it. Later that evening, they found him outside his house. "We see you with that girl, Favor, all the time. She's beautiful, and she's always coming over to your place. Why don't you share her with us? We want a taste, even if it's just once," one of them said. Corey was shocked. His face turned red with anger. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice rising. "Favor is just a student, and she's been through a lot. She comes here to study, nothing more." The other Corpers didn't believe him. They laughed and teased him. "Oh, come on, Corey. We know you're pretending. Why else would she come over so often? We just want a turn. Don't act like you're innocent." Corey clenched his fist and took a deep breath. "I said no," he shouted, his voice filled with fury. "You will leave that girl alone. She's been through enough already, and I won't let you harm her." The other Corpers sneered at him, thinking he was lying and hiding his enjoyment of Favor's company. But the truth was, Corey wasn't like them. He truly cared for Favor, seeing her as a little sister who needed guidance and protection, especially after everything she had been through. As the Corpers walked away, still laughing and mocking him, Corey's heart grew heavy. He knew these men were dangerous, and he worried about what they might try to do. He wanted to protect Favor, but he didn't know how long he could keep the evil plans of the other Corpers at bay. From that moment on, Corey kept an even closer watch on Favor, but little did he know that trouble was already on its way. The other Corpers weren't ready to give up on their dark plans. They had set their minds on Favor and wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. One quiet afternoon, Favor went to Corey's house for her usual lesson. She brought her books, hoping to learn something new. When she knocked on the door, Corey wasn't there. Instead, his friends, the other male Corpers, answered the door. They smiled at her, pretending to be kind. "Corey's gone out to buy something. Why don't you come inside and wait for him?" they said. Favor trusted them. After all, they were his friends. and she believed they would treat her with the same kindness Corey always showed. She stepped inside, thinking nothing was wrong, but the moment she sat down, everything changed. Kunal, Femi, and Dazi came into the room, closing the door behind them. Their smiles faded into something dark and wicked. Before Favor could understand what was happening, they grabbed her. She tried to scream, but her voice was trapped in her throat. Kunal was the first to face misfortune. He had just started a good job and was feeling proud of himself. But out of nowhere, he was fired. His boss gave no reason, just told him to leave. Kunal was shocked and confused. Why me? He thought, but he couldn't find any answers. Next was Femi. He had been feeling strong and healthy. But one morning, he woke up terribly sick. His body was weak, and no matter how many doctors he saw, no one could figure out what was wrong with him. The illness grew worse every day, and Femi felt like he was slowly wasting away. Then came Dazi's turn. One day, without warning, he lost everything. His entire family, his parents and siblings died in a tragic accident. The pain of losing them all at once was unbearable. Dazi didn't know how to cope, and his life fell apart. As the three men faced their suffering, they couldn't understand why all these terrible things were happening. They hadn't done anything wrong, or so they thought, but the bad luck wouldn't stop. Their lives were filled with pain and loss, and they had no idea what to do. Finally, in desperation, they decided to visit AA, an old man known for his wisdom and powers. When they arrived at his hut, they told him about their troubles and asked, "Why is this happening to us? What did we do to deserve such terrible misfortune?" The seer listened quietly, then shook his head. He looked at the men with knowing eyes and said, "This is not ordinary bad luck. It is punishment for something you did, something very wrong. The spirits are angry with you." The men were confused. "What did we do?" they asked, still not understanding. The seer's voice was deep and calm as he said, "Think back. There is a girl, Favor. You wronged her, and now the spirits of her parents are seeking justice." The men's faces turned pale as they realized what the seer was talking about. They had forgotten Favor, but the spirits had not. The seer looked at the men, his eyes serious. "Your suffering is not by chance," he said slowly. "It is the result of your wickedness. The spirits of Favor's parents are punishing you for what you did to her." At first, the men were confused. "Favor?" they asked, scratching their heads. They couldn't remember who she was. But the seer continued, his voice calm yet powerful. "You hurt her, all of you. You took advantage of her when she was vulnerable. And now her parents' spirits have risen to seek revenge." Suddenly, like a heavy curtain being pulled back, the memory of that day came flooding back to them. Favor, the quiet, sad girl who used to visit Corey's house, the one they had tricked and assaulted. The men's faces turned pale as they realized the terrible mistake they had made. They had forgotten about Favor, but the spirits of her parents had not. "The spirits will not stop until justice is served," the seer said firmly. "You must seek out Favor, and only she can forgive you. If she does not, your suffering will continue, and it will only get worse." The men were silent, their hearts pounding in fear. They hadn't thought about the consequences of their actions back then, and now they were paying the price. They knew they had to find Favor, but where could she be? The seer spoke again. "Go back to the village where it all began. You must find her and beg for her forgiveness, or you will never find peace." The men were terrified. They knew they had no choice but to return to the village and search for Favor, the girl they had wronged so deeply. But what they didn't know was whether Favor would even be willing to forgive them. Panicked and filled with dread, the men wasted no time after the seer's revelation. They knew their suffering would only get worse if they didn't find Favor. With fear and guilt weighing heavily on their hearts, they rushed back to the village where they had once sinned, the place where everything had gone wrong. As they arrived in the village, they were greeted by familiar sights, dusty roads, old huts, and the sound of children playing. But something was different. The energy around them felt heavy, as if the very ground remembered what they had done. Their hearts pounded with anxiety, knowing they had to face the consequences of their past actions. Without wasting any time, the men began asking around, stopping villagers and inquiring about Favor. Do you remember Favor, the girl who used to visit Corey? They asked, their voices shaky. The villagers paused, their expressions changing as the name Favor brought back memories. Favor, one of the old men muttered. That poor girl. Everyone remembers her. But when the men pressed further, they got the same answer over and over. She left the village after what happened. She just disappeared. No one has seen her since. The men remembered how Corey had been different from the rest of them. While they had let their desires cloud their judgment, Corey had genuinely cared for Favor, helping her study and encouraging her to reach her dreams. He had always been protective of her, and there had even been talking among the Corpers that Corey had feelings for Favor. Without wasting another moment, the men set out to find Corey, praying that he would hold the key to finding Favor.